March of Evolution! Samples! I don't allow intruders in...
For this build, we're using a weak spot build. I'm running the Bingo sniper rifle, the AWS 338, and the Wildfire. And they're both really good for weak spot builds. And then I'm using the Renegade set. I got the hood, the jacket, pants, the gloves, and then I'm using the old Huntsman boots, so the hunting boots, for the every time you trigger Bullseye, your next shot will be a weak spot hit, even if it's like in the body, it doesn't have to be in their weak spot. So it's nice if you have a gun like the Wildfire or the Bingo, where when you're hitting them, it automatically marks them, because then you can just shoot them non-stop wherever, and you'll start getting a bunch of weak spot hits. And so that's why I run the boots, because it makes the Wildfire really amazing, and it also works really well for the Bingo, and you get that extra 30% damage to the targets that are highlighted by the Bullseye. Plus Bullseye gives them vulnerability, and so they automatically take extra damage. I think it's like 8%. And then for the one standalone piece of armor, I have the Bastille Mask, which is what I usually use, because if you have over 70% HP, then you'll have plus 10% weapon damage, and then stun baton, but you can use whatever for that. So for the calibration attributes, I would use stabilized, or I would use the rapid shot quick pull bolt one. I just don't have any really decent sniper calibrations at the moment, so I have frugal, which is if you miss, your next shot gets 12% more damage, or attack, which I think adds to your overall weapon damage. And then I have the two weak spot attributes for it, for damage. And then for the Wildfire, oh, and for this gun, the weapon features, it triggers Bullseye, so it has a 70% chance to trigger Bullseye when you hit a weak spot, and after you switch weapons, the first hit will trigger Bullseye, so you can just spam swap cancel, and you can just keep shooting it, and you'll be getting Bullseyes all the time. It's really good for spamming that Bullseye because of the boots. The boots work really well with that. And it also gives you 15% more weak spot damage on hit for 10 seconds, and that stacks up to 3 times. So you can be having up to 45% weak spot damage, and if you're pairing it with the boots, that's anywhere you're hitting them. It's counting that damage, that weak spot damage. It could be anywhere on their body as long as they're procced, and the next shot triggers the Bullseye. And then after defeating an enemy with weak spot, you get 15% more attack for 20%. So it's just stacking tons of damage when you're using this. And then the mods will stack tons of damage too. And it kind of works the same with the Wildfire. And with the Wildfire for the calibrations, I have rapid shot style. So you get that extra consistent hits, which means more proccing Bullseye status, which means more damage on those targets, and which means your next shots are going to be weak spots because of the boots. And I got rapid shot because of that, and the magazine capacity, and then I have weak spot damage for the attributes for it. And then for the features, this one has a 60% chance to trigger Bullseye when hitting a target, and that doesn't have to be like a weak spot hit. It can just be anywhere on the body. But on this one, it'll trigger it anywhere on the body after you switch weapons and use it. But if you're just shooting it a bunch and you just have it out, then you have to hit weak spots. And then for the Wildfire, it has a chance. The really good thing about this one is it has an 80% chance to spread the Bullseye to 1 enemies within 15 meters. So, and then if there's no enemies within the area, the weapon damage is plus 25% for 10 seconds. So that's good if you're fighting like a boss by itself, because it'll know that there's nothing near it and it'll just give you more damage for them. And it's good because if there's mobs, it'll automatically be highlighting everything with the Bullseye status in the room. So you just run into a room with mobs and dump a clip of this into one of them, and it'll just start marking everything in the room one by one. And then that just means they're going to be taking that extra vulnerability damage, which if we look here, Bullseye, vulnerability plus 8% for 12 seconds. And then also with this gun, when you're hitting a weak spot, it gives you 3% attack for 10 seconds up to 3 stacks. You get extra damage that way too. It's an extra 9% for 10 seconds if it's full stacked. So you're spreading it, which is debuffing everyone basically, allowing them to take more damage because they're marked by the Bullseye. And then it's also doing more damage consistently to your target as you keep hitting their weak spot. And when you use the Wildfire with the boots. You can go unload on their chest, like center mass, and it's just going to be marking everything, and those hits are going to start counting as weak spots even though you're not hitting the weak spot, because the boots make it so every weak spot hit to a highlighted, or every hit to a highlighted target while triggering the bullseye after it is going to be a weak spot hit no matter what, so that's nice. And then that's it for the weapons. But for the mods, for the armor, for the hood, I've got Precise Strike because it's stacking weak spot damage plus 12% for 3 seconds, stack up to 3 times, so that's pretty good. And then I just got like weak spot attributes for all of the main attribute for these mods, and then whatever damage ones I can have for the extras. And then for the mask, I have Most Wanted because every time a target is marked, your attack is plus 5% for 8 seconds, and that can stack up to 3 times too. So that's good because since both of our guns are going to be spamming the bullseye pretty much every other hit that they hit on target, sometimes every hit, that's going to be like every time it does that, it's going to count as a weak spot hit right after. So you're going to be getting tons of weak spot hits on marked targets. You're going to be marking targets. So each time you mark them, it's going to stack that damage. And then I got the weak spot on targets with bullseye plus 12%, and then damage, status damage, damage. And then for the jacket, for the top, I'm using a blue mod. I'm using the weak spot damage mod with weak spot attribute because these ones are just mainly for survivability and I want more damage. And for the pants, I've got unstoppable precision because you get weak spot damage plus 20% when a bullet hits a target more than 20 meters away, and for every additional 1 meter away from the target you get an extra 1% damage up to 20, so you have the potential to do up to 40% more damage just from being a certain distance from them. So that's nice, especially when you're sniping or you're just approaching the enemy and you start shooting them or they start running away from you, or like snipers and stuff too. It's really good against snipers and whatnot. And then I got weak spot damage and weapon damage, damage against normal, status damage reduction. And then for weak spot damage boost, for the gloves I've got weak spot damage boost because, you know, weak spot damage, and then weak spot damage for the attribute. And then for the other attributes I tried to go damage, but I got status damage reduction as well. And then for the boots, for this mod, I've got covered advance because it's my favorite for the shoes, the boots, because you get stacking, or I mean because you get 20% melee, weapon, and status damage for 30 seconds if you don't take any damage within 4 seconds. So you just have to not take damage for 4-second intervals and you'll get 20% overall damage for 30 seconds. That's really good. And then of course I've got the weak spot attribute, and then for the other ones I've got weapon damage and damage against Great One, head damage reduction. And then for the cradles, I use the handgun enhancement because of the wildfire, because that's more damage and reloading 1 ammo when defeating an enemy. And then for the sniper, I've got long range enhancement because it's 20% more damage and then 30% chance to reload a bullet when defeating an enemy. More damage for the 2 weapons. And then we've got tactician one because you just have to spam cancel or just throw and use a tactical item and you get 25% more damage against the bosses for 15 seconds. And then the deviation master because when your deviation's out there fighting with you, you get more damage against bosses and elites. And then the tactical combo because when you're sitting there switching weapons or reloading, you're getting the extra 25% damage for 4 seconds. And then the same thing kind of here with the status enhancement, but instead of reloading or switching weapons, it's every time you hit a weak spot, it gives you more status damage. So that'll help like our bullseye status and all that. And that's 25% for 3 seconds. And then for the other ones, I have steady hand because of the weak spot damage to bullseye plus 20%. And then I have bounty hunter because after you defeat an enemy that's marked, you get plus 25% weapon damage and 35% weak spot damage for 15 seconds. And that's really strong if you're pairing this with the wildfire, because if you're running through dungeons and there's rooms full of mobs and you just start unloading on the first one you see and it procs all the other ones and eliminates him, he's going to be marked by the time he's dead and likely for the rest of them. So this damage is just going to keep refreshing as you're just eliminating enemies, and it's not really that conditional because it's just going to be constantly proccing when you're doing that. And then for the food items, I just ate it, but the hot dog is really good because it gives you extra weak spot damage to targets with bullseye. And then the canned fruit is really good too because it gives you weak spot damage as well. And if you have a good chef, you're going to get an increase on that and on like food durability or how long it lasts. And then for the drink, I drink whimsical drink for the extra status damage, or I'll drink beer for the sanity bonus, but I usually drink the whimsical drink for the extra status damage. And then I'll eat a hot dog for the status damage to weak spot, or I'll do the canned fruit, or I'll even use the the crumbly bread because you get an overall weapon damage bonus, which applies to all that. So, and another thing too is for your deviant, you can use like the butterfly because the butterfly will give you. I'm using the wolf right now, but you could use like the butterfly is going to give you more weak spot damage and it's going to highlight those enemies' weak spots for you. So that's pretty good. So the butterfly will give you, it'll mark the enemy's weak spot on hit, and it'll cause it to take 35% extra weak spot damage. So you target your butterfly on something, and it's automatically taking more weak spot damage. So it's kind of like the dog. I would say it's a lot easier to start hitting a target right away than the dog, because the dog has to traverse the terrain, where the butterfly just goes right to it. But the butterfly might not do as much overall damage. I don't know. I don't have a level 5 yet, so. But the butterfly or the dog is going to be probably one of your best bets for the extra damage for it.